So let's begin. Okay, so anybody who knows anything about entropy and thermodynamics knows that this can't be done justice in, a 15-minute little discussion. These are the points that I'm going to tackle. What I would love is an intelligent response. And I'm not going to get an intelligent response to any of this.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
What I would love is an intelligent response.
Okay.
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 Like I said, this is just for you guys. But if I do, if there is a flat earther out there that listens to what I say here and then wants to ask an intelligent question, then I will do follow-ups.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
For those of you who are out there who are brilliant at, at your science and you want to leave extra stuff in the comment section, brilliant. But I am pitching this at a level where hopefully we can all just get it.
Bring it on.
And then we've got a reply we can give. Right. It's a big topic. So I'm going to start with what is pressure. So, pressure is defined as the force per unit area. So in other words, I have to have a force upon an area. And with gas pressure, if this is my living room and these are the particles flying around, gas pressure occurs when the particles bounce off the walls or bounce off the ceiling and they create a force.
Please clap.
Now the force, we can even calculate, it's the rate of change of momentum of each particle. Just throwing that in there for no reason really. But when they bounce off the walls, they create a force, and the force upon the area of that room will give us the pressure. And we know at sea level, the pressure we get is about 14.7 psi. Now, the thing is, and I've asked this to Anthony Riley and the response was laughable. What if I'm talking about this point here, right above my carpet on the living room? What is the pressure at this moment, right there, right now?
Are you kidding me?
Well, right now, those particles are not colliding on anything. They may be bumping into each other. Okay, so I'll give you that. They may collide against each other. But what surface are they exerting a force on? It's not until I put an object in that area for those air particles to collide off that I'm going to be able to measure a pressure of 14.7 psi. They need the area to bounce off, to change their momentum against, to create that force, to create that pressure.
That's correct.
So this is where the comment, no balloon, no pressure come from, that they obviously take out of context and twist because they're intellectually dishonest and they don't fully understand the concepts and they don't want to understand the concepts. He could be determined to be right because without something for the particles to be striking, you're not going to get that change of momentum. But that doesn't mean that there has to be a dome. All that means is I just take the balloon away. Without the balloon, these air particles aren't going to be striking anything. Therefore, there is no pressure. Without the balloon, these air particles aren't going to be striking anything. Therefore, there is no pressure. So if I have a balloon here, right, what I was talking about with the whole no balloon, no pressure, I'm talking about the outside of the balloon. If the balloon is there, then the particles are going to strike the outside of the balloon and they're going to cause a pressure of 14.7 psi. You take the balloon away, what surface are they now hitting? 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 They're not. So, flat earthers seem to think that somehow the air pushes like a rod, and that fixed sort of structure will push against the ceiling, push against the floor, and unless the air has something to push off, similar to the ridiculous comments about rockets in space, unless the air has something to push off, or unless it's pushing off itself, there can be no pressure pushing outward. Gas pressure occurs when the particles bounce off the walls or bounce off the ceiling and they create a force against the ceiling, push against the floor, and unless the air has something to push off, or unless it's pushing off itself, there can be no pressure pushing outward.
Now we talk about Charles' law, which is the volume proportional to the temperature. If you're gonna raise the volume with the temperature is also gonna raise. This is more of let's say you have this cylinder that's here with a loose flowing lid on top of it. If you're going to let that volume rise because of the temperature, then you're going to have this relationship. It's the same as what I was saying. It's, let's say you are the gas molecules in that container and that ceiling is being pushed up against you. Now you throwing your balls up at that ceiling. The faster you're throwing the balls up of it, you're going to raise that ceiling because you're changing the volume. You're lifting that volume because of the temperature. So more temperature equals more volume, thanks to Charles' law.
But that of course is absolutely ridiculous. They need to be striking a surface. That's what pressure is.
That's correct.
To be striking a surface. That's what pressure is.
That's correct.
So what is the difference between pressurized and pressure? Well, this is how I'm going to explain it. And again, obviously, it goes much deeper than this. But if I take a gas, that gas is going to spread out and increase its volume at any given temperature. And as I increase the temperature, the gas is going to spread out even more. And if I increase the amount of gas, the amount of particles there, it will spread out even more.
Okay.
Now, we know this, and anyone who studies sort of like molar calculations and with gases, we know that 1 mole of a gas at a given temperature will occupy a certain volume. And if I increase the amount of gas, it's going to occupy a bigger volume. That's just a demonstrable fact, which we can go into in another video, should anybody actually be interested in that discourse.
Okay.
But what if I stop this gas being able to spread out? What if I put it into a container? So here is the gas. Now, this time, as I add more gas, it's not going to make this. It's not going to make the gas increase in its volume. I have fixed the volume. The volume now cannot change.
That's correct.
So as I add more gas, what happens is there are more collisions between these gas particles and any surface that's inside. Now that will include the inside of the container, but also anything like a balloon that I might put inside the container. So the pressure per square inch is going to increase as I add more and more and more gas because I've got more frequent collisions.
Please clap.
Now this is really what we mean by pressurized. If I take the walls away, then that gas will expand, and it will expand to a given volume dependent on the temperature and the number of moles or the number of particles of gas that I've got. But to pressurize something, you fix the volume. Now, we all will have seen this relationship at some point at school. PV equals nRT. Some people will still be working with this now, but what this essentially tells us is that the pressure times the volume of a gas will equal the temperature times, now I'm not going to get heavy into this, but this basically tells us the number of particles of gas.
So ideal gas laws, which all comes up to PV and RT. Boyle's law, Charles' law, and the Pressurized law. So they all work related to each other, all to come to the ideal gas law, which we all see in reality, and everything requires containment. Ideal gas law, PVRT. Okay, yeah, we're going to see just the relationships and what the symbols mean with the units, just as a brief outline. Okay, if you have pressure, it's a lowercase p usually, and it usually works out in pascals or even atmospheric pressure, ATM. Then you have the volume, which is the green, which is V for volume, and then you have cubed meters. Then we have the amount, which is the N, that is done in moles, so it's the amount of moles in the cubed volume. Then we have the temperature, which is T, which is always in kelvins. If you do get it in Celsius or Fahrenheit, so you would have to change it to Kelvin, because Kelvin is the absolute temperature. Now with the R, that's the gas constant, that would be always going to be this gas constant of 8.31 joules by 1 mole. That's just about it. PV on RT. So if you see, all of them are really linked to each other, and you're not going to get around having anything changing without something else happening. Everything's going to cause something else to have an effect, or another cause. So
if I increase the number of particles of gas and the temperature doesn't change, then the pressure is going to increase if the volume is fixed. So if I'm in a canister or a domed earth, for example, the volume is fixed, so the pressure is going to go up. That gives us this relationship that PV over T equals a constant. All right, now I can use either one of these formulas, but why is this important? Well, think about the Earth. So basically the Earth does not behave as a container with a fixed volume of gas, because if it did, if the volume was fixed because we had a container over the top, then the amount of gas we also would have would be fixed. So basically the Earth does not behave as a container with a fixed volume of gas. So basically the Earth does not behave as a container with a fixed volume of gas.
Pode filmar! Me para, pelo amor de Deus, cara.
So basically the Earth does not behave as a container with a fixed volume of gas. So basically the Earth does not behave as a container with a fixed volume of gas, and that would mean that the pressure is directly proportional to the temperature. So as the temperature would double, the pressure would double, but we don't see that relationship. We don't see huge changes in pressure at sea level as the temperature changes. We don't see huge changes in pressure at sea level as the temperature changes. Now, for those a little bit more advanced, we'd have to convert the temperature to Kelvin and not degrees. Again, if anyone's interested in that chat, if a flat earth wants to discuss this, I'll discuss it. Essentially, so gas pressure on Earth just does not behave like pressure in a container behaves. It just doesn't. We do not have this fixed volume capped by a dome. If we did, we would have a fixed volume of gas, and what we would find, like I've said, is if I increase the pressure, I would get I would get a proportional increase in pressure. We don't see huge changes in pressure at sea level as the temperature changes. You show me a container anywhere on Earth, where I can increase the temperature and the gas inside will have varied responses to the response in terms of its pressure.
Okay.
And you won't be able to find one at all, because it doesn't exist. Is if I increase the pressure, I would get I would get a proportional increase in pressure.
Hello everybody out there in YouTube land. Good times for all, exactly Kabbalah here if you prefer. In this video we're going to explain what we're doing here, and this is just a very rough start, folks. What we have is a bucket of ice water, okay? This is a little too warm to be touching right now. This is one of these turned over. It has one of these on the bottom of it upside down in the ice. It is held up. Oh, it's held open right now. So, and that hose is coming out right here, and it runs up to this pressure reading gauge right here, which, as you can see, is right at about 3. And this one is right at about, it's under 2.5, almost to 2. What I've done is I've taken this heating gun up to 800 degrees, and then we have the bucket of ice water at the bottom, and I'm changing the temperature, hopefully, at both ends. So we have the cold at the bottom and the heat at the top. And what we're finding is that we're getting a little bit more pressure on the bottom. Just a hair, possibly. What we really need is another one of these gauges right here. Now, in fact, these gauges may not be 100% accurate. They're old. Some of them are sticky. So this is really just a rough start, folks. This may not actually be doing what it looks like it appears to be doing. So that one's at about 2. We need this one. It appears it's at about 3. So we have, we need better equipment. But I think we can get pressure change from one gradient to another inside a sealed container. There is definitely a huge heat swing that we have here on Earth. As you go up, it gets much colder, and then it starts getting warmer again. They say much, much warmer. The highest I've seen, it still only gets like to 7 degrees, but it was negative 65 at one point, and then it starts warming up. So I started, instead of doing the heat on the bottom and the cold on the top, I did the heat on the top and the cold on the bottom. And this is trial number 1 you're seeing right here. So I'm really just throwing this out here so other people can maybe try it, or give me some ideas to make it better, really.
But of course, these guys will just completely ignore that. So let's move on to number 3. What is entropy? Good question. Now, I could be here a long, long time with this question, and I'm not going to be. Like I said, if I get sensible questions and requests based on this, I will do more. But essentially, all we need to know at this level at the minute is that it's to do with the spreading out. But it's not to do with spreading out of mass. And this is what, again, flat earthers would have you believe. If I have lots of gas particles here, we do know they are going to spread out. But it's not the spreading out of the gas particles that follows entropy. What entropy is the spreading out of energy. If I take these gas particles with the spreading out, and I'm to measure not the kinetic or potential energies, it's to do with the spreading out. I have a lot of energy, but it's not to do with space. When they spread out, they are dissipating that energy spreading out. But it's not to do with spreading out of mass, and it's to do with the spreading out. But it's not to do with spreading out of mass, and the spreading that energy over a larger area. We talk about order to chaos, all right? And that's essentially what entropy is. So what is the law of entropy? Well, the law of entropy is essentially that the entropy in the universe must always be increasing. In other words, the energy of the universe is spreading out. That's not necessarily the same as saying the matter in the universe is spreading out. This is what, again, flat earthers would have you believe. If I have lots of gas particles here, we do know they are going to spread out. But it's not the spreading out of the gas particles that follows entropy. What entropy is the spreading out of energy. Then I have a lot of energy contained in a small space. When they spread out, they are dissipating that energy with them. What entropy is the spreading out of energy. Then I have a lot of energy contained in a small space. When they spread out, they are dissipating that energy with them.
Robinson, and in this What Is video, we're going to investigate the state of matter called a gas. Gases are materials that have no definite volume and no specific shape. In other words, gases can easily flow into and take the shape of a container and will expand, redistributing themselves to evenly fill that container. Although there are many types of gases, there are a few characteristics that they have in common. First, particles in a gas have no real arrangement. They can move over and past one another, and the space between the molecules can increase or decrease. Molecules in a gas collide with one another and move more quickly or more slowly based on factors like temperature and pressure, but they will always spread out fairly equally to fill the space that they're in. All of this molecular movement means that gases hold a lot of kinetic energy. Energy is caused by motion. Second, gases can be compressed. Because there is space between the molecules in a gas, it can be placed under pressure and squeezed so that the particles are forced to be close to one another. Third, gases can flow from one area to another, although the direction of flow is not directly affected by gravity. This ability to flow means they are sometimes referred to as fluids. Last, gases have melting points and boiling points that are below room temperature. For the most part, we are unable to see gases because of the space between their particles. Scientists have to use characteristics like pressure, volume, number of particles per unit area, and temperature to discuss and identify them. Gases are commonly used in things like cooking, healthcare, and scientific research, and they even make up the air we breathe.
In a demonstration of Boyle's law, we'll place a balloon in a vacuum bell jar. We'll apply a vacuum, which basically pumps out the air in the bell jar. The pressure outside the balloon will be greater than the pressure inside. The balloon expands to try and equalize the pressure. Volume and pressure are inversely related to each other. When we release the vacuum, the pressure increases and the volume decreases. As another demonstration of Boyle's law, we will put a marshmallow piece into our vacuum jar. The marshmallow contains air trapped in a mixture of gelatin and sugar. As we apply the vacuum, the pressure outside is lower than the pressure inside. The air in the peep will expand to try and equalize the pressure. When we release the vacuum, the pressure increases and the volume decreases. As another illustration of Boyle's law, we will put some shaving cream into our vacuum jar. The shaving cream contains air trapped in a soap mixture. As we apply a vacuum, the pressure outside is lower than the pressure inside. The shaving cream will expand to try and equalize the pressure. As you decrease the pressure, the volume increases.
Now let us look at some examples of spontaneous changes and see how they are accounted for in terms of the second law of thermodynamics. We'll take the simplest first and look at changes where only the entropy changes. Now, one, perhaps the simplest of all, these, is the expansion of a gas into a vacuum. I have in one of these bulbs some bromine, and in the other I have a vacuum. And if I open the tap between these two, you will see spontaneously the bromine rush from one to the other. Now that is the simplest change we can have, perhaps, because all that happens is a change in entropy. In this case, the expansion into a vacuum, nothing else is involved. There's no energy change, there's no temperature change, there's no change except entropy. So without the entropy concept, that would have been difficult to understand and difficult to account for.
Is spreading out. But that's across the universe. On a local scale, we see the opposite of that many times. But energy on a local level can be decreased. So let's think about a cup of water. And the particles are flying around with all the kinetic and potential energy moving around everywhere. And then I freeze it and I form something where the energy is less spread out, like in an ice cube. Here I am decreasing, I'm making them more ordered, I am decreasing the entropy. Now that's on a local level, but how do I freeze my ice? Well, I put it in a freezer. And inside the freezer there'll be processes taking place where entropy is increased in order to achieve the cold environment. But we don't need to know how a fridge works. We can go back to the power station that the fridge is plugged into. And there I am burning coal, I'm burning fossil fuels, where I'm increasing the entropy at the power station side to allow me to decrease entropy here. But overall, the entropy will be increasing. So on a local level, a decrease in entropy, we see it all the time.
That's correct.
So let's apply that to a number of different ways we can show that the laws of entropy are not being broken by having a gas pressure next to a vacuum. And it's going to be a while before I even say the word gravity. So remember, it's the amount of entropy in the universe that has to increase. So these gas particles here that gain their kinetic energy that allows them to rise up, where do they gain that kinetic energy from? Well, they get heated by the ground. And how does the ground get heated? Well, it gets heated by the sun. And in the sun, we have huge amounts of nuclear fusion taking place and huge amounts of energy being released and spread out through the entire solar system. There is not a bigger source of increase in entropy than the sun. And if that causes these gas particles to gain energy and rise, even if they don't suddenly jump off into the vacuum of space, the sun itself is showing that within the universe, entropy, or within our solar system at least, entropy is being increased.
That's correct.
But that's a really basic answer, so let's look a little bit further. So, why can the particles move? Well, the particles can move because they absorb heat energy, which is turned into kinetic energy. They get that from the ground, again, which comes from the sun. And as they rise with their kinetic energy, the temperature of the atmosphere starts to drop. And they radiate off some of that energy. They radiate off that heat energy in all directions, which will be an increase in entropy. And as they radiate out that heat energy in all different directions, they lose kinetic energy. And they start to slow down. There is not a bigger source of increase in entropy than the sun. And because they start to slow down, when they hit something, they don't hit it with as big a force anymore. So the pressure is going to drop because they're not striking with as big a force on that area. The rate of change of momentum in all different directions, they lose kinetic energy less. But also, to get that high, we can use what we call the Boltzmann equation. And in the Boltzmann equation, this can be considered a representation of the entropy per molecule. So basically, the Earth does not behave as a container with a fixed volume of gas. The Boltzmann equation can allow us to accurately predict how many particles will have enough energy left to reach a certain height. And that is what we see, that's represented by what we see in the real world. So basically, the Earth does not behave as a container with a fixed volume of gas. Now, I've used the Boltzmann equation before, and people at Anthony Riley have said, oh, it's just a statistic probability. They don't understand that entropy is actually included really in the Boltzmann equation. But the Boltzmann equation can allow us to accurately predict how many particles will have enough energy left to reach a certain height. And that is what we see, that's represented by what we see in the real world. So basically, the Earth does not behave as a container with a fixed volume of gas. So basically, the Earth does not behave as a container with a fixed volume of gas.
Uphill at a fairly exponential rate. So it's good stuff. Subscribe today to Flatzoid.